Welcome to another Let's Talk Paranormal, and today we're discussing remote viewing. Now, if you don't have any idea what that's about, stay tuned to the show because my special guest today, FM Bonsall, who's traveled all the way from Las Vegas, is going to be discussing exactly what remote viewing is all about. But a little clue is it's to do with ESP. And he's going to be telling us exactly how we can get involved, how you can do it at home, and his experiences with remote viewing. Welcome to the show, FM.
Thank you, Tracie.
How did you get involved with remote viewing?
I actually heard about, in the news at the end of 1995, when the news broke about the military remote viewing unit that the CIA had let go. And when I heard about that, it kind of piqued my interest in the paranormal and psychic functioning. I thought, oh, the government's involved, that lended credence in my mind. So I started researching remote viewing and ended up falling in actually with the operations and training officer of the military remote viewing unit. He ran the program called Stargate.
Right.
That was in 1997. Got hooked up with him, and the next thing I know, trained by him, became his chief operating officer for about 3 years, and the rest is history, as they say. So
the government has been involved with this for the last 20 years, I read.
Yeah, at least, let's see, 72, at least 20 years if in an operational capacity, in a research, at least going back to 1972, so 30 years for as far as research and research contracts, but operationally, yeah, over 20 years.
So when did you decide that remote viewing is what you really wanted to do with your life?
Truth be known, it was when I first heard about it. I was just completely fascinated by the government's involvement, and said, wait a minute, if this is really true and really real and a real ability, then what could be more worthwhile in taking your life in that direction? What could be more worthwhile? And I just was, I said, that's it. And I pretty much dropped everything I was doing, had a business, sold that, started getting rid of stuff and lightening my load for the journey ahead, so to speak, and dove in with both feet.
Wonderful. Yeah. Now, it's to do with ESP, as we mentioned to the audience. So to put the audience out of their misery so that they know what remote viewing is, how would you describe it?
I've yet to come up with a real short definition, but I mean, if you really have to have one, it's systematic ESP. That's it in a nutshell. But it's out of the Stanford Research Institute. A natural psychic was researched and studied himself, and this gentleman by the name of Ingo Swann, he developed a methodology by which he actually perceives things psychically. And he built this into a step-by-step methodology. He then trained people in this skill. They got feedback. They knew that it worked. And it's essentially, it is step-by-step procedural ESP where more time on target gives you closer target contact. And I'm lapsing into the technical parts of it, but essentially, whereas a natural psychic talks about what they're seeing and feeling, a trained remote viewer is all based on psychological, empirical evidence, monitors their mind for visual images, all the auditory talk that's going inside their head, the kinesthetics of felt position and motion, the emotions of people at the target, and discriminating that between their own personal reactions, so that a remote viewer is trained to operate all modalities of the way we process information and the way we process psychic information, because we understand that the missing link for us is, how does that psychic target that's distant in space-time get to us? That's the missing link. But once we know that that information is here, it's processed the exact same way that information through the regular senses is processed. And it's kind of technical, but it is essentially, a remote viewer is a psychic that is covering the whole spectrum of human perception, per se.
So we don't have to be psychic, though, to do this. Anybody can learn remote viewing.
Absolutely
correct?
not. We have found that through over 7 years that I've been involved in remote viewing, everybody that comes in for training and instruction, they're all there. Every one of them performs well. Some become virtuosos, to use the metaphor of remote viewing. Others just playing barnyard or playing childhood rhymes, in a
Right,
metaphor. They don't become
right,
that good. But
right.
clearly, everybody can operate and function psychically without exception.
Do you find, FM, that there's a certain age range that seems to be
Yeah.
better?
Yeah, as a matter of fact. I don't know any real professional remote viewers that are under the age of 30. There seems to be kind of and this is, I've only seen maybe a few hundred remote viewers come and go. So I mean, it's not a real large target pool to make broad sweeping statements. There's a real kind of problem area right around from 18 up till about 22, 24. In that area, it just seems that those people just don't do well. I don't know what it is, but anybody 30 and over, you definitely you're the target market. And even 50-year-olds, I know 50-year-olds that learn remote viewing that just perform fantastically.
Because of their development with the brain at that age?
We speculate that at root it's that because first of all of us are naturally intuitive. We all are born with that that evolutionary streak in us that allows us to perceive psychically. But there's something, whereas a natural psychic is getting information that they may or may not be able to make sense of. Somebody that is 50 years old, well-traveled, highly intelligent, well-educated, has got a lot of what we refer to as labels.
Right.
So that when they're perceiving psychic information, that information that comes in on a psychic channel has got to be bounced off the left hemisphere, and a label has got to be pulled out of associative memory to come up with a label so that the information can be objectified.
Right.
It makes sense to him. Oh, that's what that is.
Right, okay.
So that essentially to roll into a paranormal area, it's like if I'm a professional remote viewer and I were to remote view a UFO and I was targeted on it, we want information on its propulsion system, okay? I might be I'd be able to sketch the heck out of it, but I would be probably at a complete loss for words in trying to explain the way this propulsion system works, because I have no labels, I have no language for what it is that powers this thing. So that's where the education and experience and background kind of comes in. So,
right. Now you've remote viewed some very, very interesting things, some very interesting targets. I know you've remote viewed the moon, and you've remote viewed Mars, and we're going to see some images on screen that will show some very strange anomalies on Mars and on the moon, which you can tell us about. What are we looking at here, FM? Do you see this?
I'm going to throw my glasses on as I look at that. That certainly does look like the moon. Ooh, I see that in the bottom of the screen there. That is a feature that I'm not familiar with.
Okay.
And but it is obviously very interesting, and believe it or not, it actually looks like a little bit of a mosaic too. But something like that is that would be fairly easily remote viewed.
Something that's easily
But I haven't ever spent any time on that particular target.
Okay.
What that is.
Let's pull up number 2 and see what we have here. I know there's some very interesting things. What about that one?
Again,
There's
that is
tracks there. Can you see them?
Yeah, I do. That is definitely anomalous. It's kind of hard to look at that and say what caused that. Again, and you believe that's on the moon? That's a lunar feature?
It is on the moon. It's a lunar feature.
Again, I'm not I have remote viewed. When we remote view, we don't really remote view the moon, the whole moon. We pick one particular something like this.
Right.
We make that a target, and then we go after it. And again, I haven't looked at that, but it wouldn't be that difficult of a target for a remote viewer in a session.
Right.
And we would find out pretty quickly, what created those tracks.
Right. So these images we're seeing right now are of interest to you to remote view?
Oh, yeah, definitely. My only problem is I'm capacity constrained on there's only so much time to do the remote viewing. But yeah, they're eminently interesting and would in any remote viewer, because it would, whatever shows up in a remote viewing session, some remote viewer is going to be going, whoa, what is this? I have no idea, sketching some bizarre something in this, if something like that had caused that.
Right.
Or very, very simply, oh, it's a river, I got a river of water that may have caused that. But yeah, it is interesting.
What is the use to remote view? What is the, okay, we can learn to do it, but how can we use it effectively in our lives?
You can, there are applications that are, I would have to say, are somewhat matched with skill level, all right? In the beginning of remote viewing, the staple of remote viewing training is the standard National Geographic photograph. We train on blind targets, in an envelope, where this feature, geographic feature, wherever it's at on the planet, we give that to a remote viewer, and they train on getting that right. And that's probably the first few months of a remote viewer's instruction, is constantly getting good feedback. I'm on target. I'm on signal. I can trust what I get. So now, at a certain level, now I can start pointing this tool on myself. Okay,
right.
Let me determine what is coming up in the next week of my life that I need to keep an eye out for. What particular moment? We do things that are called optimum trajectories, and we bracket them with time, and we can determine, what's coming up in your life that you need to take a look at, and what's interesting. There are other things. There's quite a bit. There's the whole universe becomes your playground with remote viewing. But honestly, since people have needs, we all have, well, I don't have a job, this is my job, but other people have jobs and day jobs. There's only so much time to spend with remote viewing, and a remote viewing session can run 30 to 45 minutes. Money, the people they've got to take remote viewing and turn it into either money or something to give them instant value in life. A good percentage, probably 20% of the active remote viewers out there are working sporting events that are winning, and wagering money on those outcomes, because those are actually pretty easy targets too. So,
okay. We had an email question because you're up on the website and people know that you were coming on the show today. And we had an email question from Chris, who wanted to actually know if you can view into the future with this remote viewing, because you just mentioned that was possible.
Yeah, absolutely. There appears to be, it is just as easy to remote view something present time, if this is my timeline, so to speak, to remote view present time in the past and into the future. It does appear that for most things that we think are random, like sporting events, even things as obscure as lottery numbers. I've remote viewed successfully lottery numbers almost 4 weeks out in advance, even in the California Daily 3 lottery.
Gosh.
And you think, wait a minute, those are numbers generated by computers. How random is that? We can remote view into the future. What happens is it does appear that, and this has generally been demonstrated empirically, is when we take 4, 5, 6 remote viewers and we target them on the future of some event, and what happens is all the viewers will come back with something different. Then we know that we believe that we have gone too far out in time to where it appears that this event is not a done deal yet.
Which brings me to the question of how far into the future then can you really go? Where do you have to draw the line?
Again, depending on what it is, things like large geological events, like catastrophic earthquakes and things like that. Those are, you could say, their momentum is so big, is so huge. When we talk about geological years, we're talking long time frames. But the next Los Angeles area earthquake that will exceed 8.0 on the Richter scale, it's a done deal. It's a known, it's an easy thing to pick up in the event because it is coming. It is coming, we know it's coming, and there is nothing that can change it. So you can go way out in the future with things like that.
Right.
When you get out to the extreme limits, it starts to look a little wild. There's a lot of things, I hate to use the term earth changes, but enough remote viewers, skilled remote viewers that have come out of the military unit, and I've seen a lot of their work, my own work and in the work of the viewers that I work with, you start to get this really dark picture out there, and everybody's coming up with the same thing, so it's in the future. It's, and I kind of, part of me doesn't want to believe that, but I'm not sure. Are we up against the boundaries of where we are in the future?
So what is the accuracy of remote viewing?
In any given remote viewing session, I'm talking about a trained remote viewer. This is a truly trained professional, and there's not that many out there. I probably know about 5 of them, the people that don't do anything but remote viewing, and their work is good enough to be paid. Any individual session is 80% accurate, plus or minus 5% on any particular piece of data. We know primarily where that 20-25% inaccuracy is at, but there's always that little bit of wiggle room. But it's a high level of accuracy. If we can put 2 or 3 remote viewers at least, though, on the same target and get to 100% accuracy on the information that is mutually corroborating.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's look at the next picture.
Please.
And we'll have a look and see what you think about this one. We're just throwing these pictures up here. I hear FM go, ooh, I think he's actually remote viewed this. You have?
Yeah, I have, actually. That would have been first in 1990, for me, 1997.
Now, just explain to the audience what this is called.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what is known as the lunar shard.
Correct,
right?
yeah, apparently
and
so.
That was given to me as a blind target back in 1997, probably 6-9 months after I had been originally trained. So I was still I was young but good, and I can tell you that is part of a structure. What's left of a domed structure that was on the moon. I don't remember what was actually inside, but this was an actual dome structure. As much as that may stretch credulity with some people, a dome structure on the moon, and that's.
And you don't know what it was for?
I don't remember what the purpose was.
Right.
I mean, it was at my level of training. I mean, it was good enough for me to be able to get this dome structure, in a desert planet.
And what about the builders of this who constructed it? Yeah. Did you remote view those?
Actually, I have not. I've
right.
And I'm not 100% sure. I've spent probably the bulk of my remote viewing of things paranormal and life forms outside of this planet, has more had to do with Mars. That's the more popular topic. So with this one, haven't spent that much time, and don't recall actually what the people look like. And my skills, honestly, weren't good enough at 6 to 9 months to be able to accurately sketch what they look like either. So
okay, let's pull up the next one and see what we have. Now, what about this? We have a very small object
casting quite a shadow.
Yes. You haven't remote viewed this particular anomaly?
I have not. Haven't seen this one. But this, again, believe it or not, these are very simple remote viewing targets. This is, you literally, I mean, to task a remote viewer with this, would literally take the photograph, circle the object, put it in an envelope, give it a random set of numbers, and I pass that on to a professional viewer and say, hey, John, do me a favor, do 2306-1457 for me. And he'll come back sketching something, and we'll see what that is. But I haven't that one haven't actually remote viewed.
Okay, so supposing our audience today wanted to learn how to do it. What do they do? Where do they start?
Good question. At this point, where remote viewing's at, coming out of the military remote viewing unit, it really does appear that the only way to learn this is to learn it from somebody, to learn it in, I want to say private instruction, but you got to get it hands-on. You got to have somebody there showing you what to do. So trying to learn this yet through a book, through a videotape or something like that, and I developed, in part with another group of people, the first set of remote viewing videotapes back in 1997, and you know how difficult it is, and the level of people that are actually successful. Ideally, I would say the best bang for the buck is come to one of my workshops. I mean, I hate to, be a huckster for my own stuff, but I've been doing this for so long. We're so good at this that we can, in a weekend, we can really get people up to speed quickly.
And once again, the advantage of doing this, of learning remote viewing, is?
What I tell people is that it's not so much what you can do with remote viewing. It's what you become as a remote viewer. That this practice of remote viewing what you're doing is you are connecting conscious mind with your personal unconscious, which is collected to the matrix, the global unconscious. And what you're doing is, by constantly training, you are opening up a pipeline that just gets bigger and bigger between conscious mind and your unconscious mind, wherever I'm pointing on my head, wherever they're at, okay?
Okay.
But that pipeline becomes a well-worn pathway, and that you really do become very quickly much more intuitive, much more psychic, and with the skills that we train you, we teach you to not immediately quash those psychic flashes and insights that everybody gets. They pop in, and then they instantly, the left hemisphere, the logical, instantly crushes it within fractions of a second. We teach people to focus and to hold and to get that information, and you literally become a walking, talking, I'm going to say psychic, but constantly plugged in to your environment around you. And people even just finish a weekend of this. They talk about walking around, my God, the grass is so much greener, the traffic noise is so much louder. So that there's drawbacks to learning this too at the same time.
Right. It alters some kind of consciousness then.
It heightens awareness. We say that remote viewing is basically, it's perception. It really is perception. And when you learn remote viewing, you are just widening your perceptual boundaries greatly.
Wow. Let's keep looking at those pictures, those images of those anomalies. And, oh, look at this. The face on Mars.
My old home. Been there many a time as a remote viewer. That's whether we have the face on Mars.
The face on Mars.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's close to the Cydonia region, if it's not necessarily included in the Cydonia region. That, believe it or not, I have not actually remote viewed the face on Mars. I think I've remote viewed everything else in the face on Mars.
Right.
Around Cydonia region, but not the face on Mars.
But that would be a very interesting target, though, to
yes, it
remote
would.
view.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would. And it's not just, they become, without going too far into the complexities, you don't just, a remote viewer can just remote view that present time, okay? Face on Mars, present time. We can also task remote viewers to face on Mars construction period. In other words, we can target them to whenever this thing, if we determine first that it's actually a man-made thing, we can actually target them on the construction of this and see exactly how it was constructed. If it was, something done along the lines of the pyramids, you know what I mean? A bunch of Martian slaves, going through.
What's the most exciting thing you've remote viewed? What's the most interesting?
The most interesting
Probably
thing.
interesting stroke bizarre.
Let's see. I remember my first one of my second remote viewing target, which was one of my most livid, was being inside a comet. But the one that really struck me was, I don't know if you're familiar with a Carlos Diaz photograph.
I am familiar with Carlos Diaz, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think I know the photograph you're talking about.
Yeah, the one is this orange thing.
Yes.
And that was one that was about the 9-month mark in my training, and it was given to me as a blind target. And I am telling you that whatever that was at that end, I followed it back, okay, because that apparently had popped through interdimensionally, and I identified this long space-time tube, and as a remote viewer, okay, well, this is interesting, but what's more interesting is this, wow, where is this coming from? And as a remote viewer, you follow it back. And it was what was at the other end that was interesting. And again, came into remote viewing as a skeptical guy, but we're talking, life forms at the other end, very conscious, very sentient, but only about yay high, and looking something like lizards, salamanders.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
That's interesting stuff.
It's interesting and it's bizarre, and when you're in the middle of a remote viewing as a blind target, it is even more so, because it's just so, I want to say, shocking, so to speak. It's like, out of all the things, what is this that's shown up?
And do you get any kind of feelings from these beings that you're seeing, that you're drawing? Or?
Yeah, it's been a few months since I've actually remote viewed one of these, but absolutely, we can connect with them emotionally, and we as remote viewers also mentally too. And this is the funny thing about remote viewing when it's these other races is, most of them that I've remote viewed, they know when they're being remote viewed. Unlike humans on this planet, they know when they're being remote viewed.
That's one question I wanted to ask you. Do any people that you're remote viewing, or any beings, do they know? How do they feel?
They do,
that they're being
and
viewed?
there's very few people. Sorry, I mean to cut you off.
No, no problem.
On this planet, remote viewed some ascended masters on this planet from India. If you actually remote view them, and I personally, and I have had them, do the metaphorical this turn, as I'm remote viewing them, and all of a sudden, oh my,
How
their
bizarre.
attention comes back to me, and it's very nonplussing the first time it happens.
How
But
bizarre.
it is, but it's fascinating, and it expands your mind even further beyond the basic mechanics of remote viewing. Okay, I'm describing something, but when something turns its attention back to you in a remote viewing session. So, but outside of ascended masters, on this planet, in various religious and theological bents, nobody knows. They really don't know when they're being remote viewed. Other races appears, the majority of them, and not saying that there's a whole bunch of them, but the ones that I've remote viewed, they definitely know they're being remote viewed. Some of them don't take too kindly to it either.
Well, FM, sadly we've run out of time.
Already?
Already.
Oh my God.
I know. We'll have to have you back, and we can do
God.
part 2 of the remote viewing.
I'd love to.
We would love to have you back. Thank you for joining us today. Check out FM on my website. There's information about FM and remote viewing and how you can become involved with the remote viewing classes. Finally, before we leave, I just want to show you this. Let's Talk Paranormal just won an award, which is a 24th Annual Tally Award, and I'm so excited to receive it, and I just want to thank all of the staff at the studios here for helping to produce the show. It's actually everyone's award, so well done everybody.